Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. So, folks, a lot of happenings with the case of Brian Thompson, the United Healthcare CEO, who was gunned down coming 5 days ago now. And it seems like many people are growing impatient. Why doesn't the NYPD have this guy? Many people with their own theories, a lot of politics thrown into this, but yet this comes down to grunt detective work, getting out there, pulling the video. The chief of detectives of the NYPD stated that sometimes a detective has to watch 8 hours of video to get an 8-second clip. That is the painstaking reality of this case. But yet many feel that he should be in custody already. Many social media experts, talking heads all over the place. Many of them have never worked a homicide before, but they're all experts on how fast it should occur. Yesterday, here's the 2 new pictures you see on that thumbnail. And as they realized that this individual, the alleged perpetrator, the alleged shooter, we'll use that word, he had entered New York City on November 24th. And then there were reports that after he got out of the 42nd Street and 8th Avenue Port Authority, they pulled video and they were able to find out that he went right to the Hilton Hotel. In fact, he was at that location on the 24th of November at 10:19 p.m. on the 24th. What was he doing? He was what we call reconning. He was checking out the location. He was preparing for his, what we call in law enforcement, as countermeasures. How to counter everything that law enforcement does. So how do you do that? Well, one of the ways you do it is you're prepared. Some of the other things that he did, of course, was cover his face. We never get totally a clear shot of his entire face. And it would seem the entire time, there's another shot, that he was in New York City, he covered his face. They said even when he was in that hostel on 104th Street and Amsterdam Avenue, that when he ate, he covered his face. So he was very cognizant that there's cameras, that there's people, there's witnesses. And he didn't want to have anyone be able to identify him. So he did a pretty good job of that. Yet the NYPD is canvassing the entire city and every location that he could have possibly went to. And they're tracking that through a number of different ways, a number of different digital platforms, certainly the burner phone that he left behind. And they know, of course, the route that he took from the shooting location on 54th Street, entering Central Park by Central Park South, and then heading northbound. And we're going to get more into that on today's show, on his route and what he did when he was inside the park. And he was only inside the park for 12 minutes. So he had very, very low exposure, yet he did have exposure. And we're going to go into all of those investigative details today. So folks, hold on to your hats, hold on to your wig, hold on to your toupee, hold on to your next door neighbor, hold on to your loved ones, because you're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone.
There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
And now, a word from our sponsor. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA and college basketball, NHL to UFC. Head to BetOnline today and don't forget to use promo code BLEAV, Believe, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. Folks, we're going to get right into this. And first, I'm going to introduce my two great co-hosts today. I call them guests, but they're on so frequently, I got to call them co-hosts. First, retired NYPD Sergeant, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, attorney. Welcome to the show, Professor Mike Geary. Mike, welcome.
Bill, thank you for having me on. Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone.
Absolutely. And a crowd favorite who's been coming back. I've been getting all kinds of positive feedback from this gentleman reappearing on the Police Off the Cuff podcast. We have retired NYPD detective and straight out of Brooklyn, Phil Grimaldi. Welcome, Phil.
How you doing, Mike and Bill? Glad to be here.
You know, yesterday, guys, I'm going to get right into it. Obviously, some of the things that we found out yesterday. Let's start with these new photos. All right. Does it help us ID this guy anymore? Again, different clothing. He's changed his clothing numerous times, so much so that many people that have been following this case are like, that's not the same guy. There's people have different clothing. People have different jackets. People have different looks. You know, we believe it is the same guy. These pictures that you see up on the screen right now apparently are from the taxi that he took on the day of the shooting when he fled from 86th Street up to 178th Street to the Port Authority up on 178th Street. And all the NYPD will tell us about that is he went in the terminal and he never came out. So they are, at this point, they must know what bus he got on. But that's what they know. He went into the Port Authority terminal on 178th Street and Broadway, and he never came out. Professor Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, Bill, it's obvious that he's from out of state, or he's presently, he's not in New York, or he's presently living out of state, and he's got some help, and he's got to get back to wherever he came from. And so that's why he come in on the bus and you leave by the bus. It's amazing when you look at the timeline. This guy may not have been, like an expert shot, expert marksman, a real serial killer. But this guy was really sharp with the way he operated. He got out of there very quickly, got into the park. As you could see, he got rid of, by that point, when you look at the video, those still pictures, he'd gotten rid of the backpack. All right. And then he's on his way to the bus terminal. And he didn't have a lot of time. Apparently, between the shooting at 6:45 a.m. and him getting on the bus probably somewhere around 8 o'clock, 7:30 in the morning, that's not a lot of time to coordinate all those actions. He was moving that morning, and that's a sign that he was well prepped, well rehearsed. He knew what he was doing.
Mike, that's such a great point, because from the time of the shooting to the time he got into the park, according to retired Chief of Detectives Robert Boyce, and we'll play a clip of him later, he said that he spent a total of 12 minutes inside the park. That includes entering the park, getting rid of the backpack. Okay, so did he have to secrete that somewhere? I don't think he haphazardly just threw it into the brush. And also, at some point, did he, and this we don't have the answer to right now, did he get rid of that gun? I was betting that they were going to find the gun in that backpack, but it appears that he kept the gun. He did not get rid of that gun. As far as we know, they haven't found it, because yesterday, NYPD scuba unit dove into the lake nearest to the route and searched the lake. Now, for all we know, they could have found the gun, and they're not telling us. But we don't know right now. Phil, your thoughts?
Well, Bill, very great points brought up by both of my colleagues here. If the gun was thrown into the lake, very, very difficult to find it. Now, we know they did a search. They may continue to do more searches. The gun may or may not have been discarded. but I think he was methodical about the way that he placed the backpack. That backpack looked to me like it was not hidden. It was left in plain sight, almost as if he wanted it to be found. We know about the monopoly money being placed inside. That's taunting the investigators and maybe making some relation to the healthcare industry with the way money is held back and not spent on people who have the insurance. This whole thing seems to be motivated by the healthcare industry. So this perpetrator took great lengths to study the area. As you said earlier, Billy, he did a recon. He reconned the location. The minute he got into town, he went right to the New York Hilton that he believed that he was going to do this heinous crime. Now, he had help. What I mean by that is he had the cover of darkness when this shooting took place. I know that Manhattan, 24 hours a day, people on the street, but there were less people on the street and in the area at that time. I think that aided in his escape. He did leave on foot, got onto the bike, went into the park, spent 12 minutes in the park. Did he have help? That's one of the big questions that I'm struggling with. I believe he was in town for 10 days. Who was he with? We want to know those details. Very, very important. One other thing I want to know. The victim was in town for 2 days prior to the shooting. Did their paths cross? Is it possible that he was stalking the victim prior to that morning? And I think those are all answers that will come from that cell phone that was left. I believe there may have been 2 cell phones. We think this phone that was left was a burner phone. If he drops it and it's his phone that comes back to him, he's going to want to retrieve it. I don't think he would have left that at the scene. However, he drops it. It's a burner phone. He figures it's not going to come back to me. But he still had to have communications. Did he leave the scene without communications and get on a bus and do all of these things without communication? I don't think so. I believe there are 2 cell phones, and when he's captured, and I believe he will be, perhaps his cell phone is going to give us the answers to all the stuff that I just brought up. Where did he travel for those 10 days? Where did he go? That's going to also lead investigators to look for more video of him. If we know where the cell phone traveled, now we're going to go there. It's a date and time. We're going to look for video cameras in an area, and perhaps we'll be able to capture him on video with better shots of his face.
You know, what everyone is asking you the question is does the NYPD have his name? Is he identified? Now, they're not putting that out there. I know Reuters put it out there that they have his name. I think Mayor Adams even alluded to the fact that they may have his name. It's been out there, but the NYPD has not confirmed that they have his name. If they do have his name, many doors will then be opened. We will find out exactly who it is. What is his work history? Where does he live? Who are his associates? Family, all of those things. They can do computer checks and find out where he was born. They can do a complete round robin on this guy. Now, if he's not ID'd, they are still, again, this is an international manhunt at this point. They have a lot of digital evidence, a lot of forensic evidence that they can try to pin him, his location, where he traveled, and all of those things. In my opinion, and I believe he had help. And whether it was help right on the scene or help financing this or help planning this. Look, many people in the chat will say, oh, you guys have come up with several wrong theories. You know something? That's investigation. You know, detectives sit around and they do what Phil would call spitballing. I used to call it hypothesizing and theorizing as to what happened based on logic and based on the evidence that that you have available to you at this point. However, I mean, why? Because he was going to do this horrible crime, why did he have to be there for 10 days? That's baffling. To me, that says that maybe he was meeting with somebody.
Bill, can I make a quick point?
Go ahead, Phil.
My intel that I have, my contacts are saying that he hasn't been identified. We thought, and I said this on a previous show, that I thought, yeah, he was probably identified already. I would be surprised if he wasn't. My contacts are saying no, that he's not identified. However, they could be carrying this very, very close to the vest, and he may or may not be identified. But that cell phone that was left at the scene, if we can connect that to some locations, if we can turn up that he did work with someone else that's still in the city, put that person in the trick bag and they're going to give him up quick. And that's how I think one of the ways that we might be able to identify him. Listen, the wheels are turning on this investigation. He's going to be identified. He's going to be captured. I have great faith in that. But the information I'm getting from pretty close to the case is that he hasn't been identified yet. And as I said, I'd be a little surprised by that. I said that the other day. But however, the way it looks, he wasn't in APHIS with the fingerprints. We don't think he's in the DNA database. The facial recognition is a little bit unclear right now because they can't get a clear shot of his face. So let's just wait and see what this case is going to reveal.
You know, Phil, I mean, I'm not buying that. I think he's ID'd, and I'll tell you why. They sent detectives to Atlanta, Georgia. All right. The NYPD is not sending them down there just on a wild goose chase. They have information. They have information that he may have gone there. And of course, if the bus that he got on in the Port Authority was going to Georgia, the bus that he got on, that he took on the 24th of November came from Georgia. So I believe the phone has got to be ringing off the hook because his face, Phil, is out there. All right. And the face, you know, the best picture, of course, is that little smiley face when he was flirting with the desk clerk at the youth hostel. So people that see that know him. They know who this guy is. 1-800-577-TIPS. The phone is ringing off the hook. Secondarily, where's the bike?
Exactly.
Professor Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, Bill, that bike would hold some information on it because you got maybe, depending on if you had gloves, you can get some sort of fingerprint, you can get some sort of DNA off of it. If it's got any sort of serial number and a manufacturer and maybe a sticker from like where the store it was bought from, you know, that sort of thing, that would help out tremendously because then you could put a date of purchase of the bicycle at a particular department store, who bought it, surveillance video there, if they still have it. I was thinking about that. And I was also thinking, since he did, it appears he came from out of state and possibly Georgia. He's going back out of state, possibly Georgia. It could be the jurisdiction could change also, could be dual jurisdiction with the FBI. If it appears this guy is actually trying to terrorize anybody post 9/11, that may be a federal offense. It is a federal offense, but it also may be a death penalty case, depending on the facts of the situation. So there's a lot at stake for the NYPD and also the FBI, because this guy, depending on what they uncover about all the motives, if it's just a single shooting or he and his group are planning to shoot other people as CEOs and part of the healthcare infrastructure in America, this may end up being a domestic terrorist case.
You know, Mike, one of the most important things, and I'm not calling you out on this, but one of the most important things you've missed about the e-bike is that they all have GPS.
Oh, okay.
So
thank you.
That will tell us his exact movements. So that my thoughts, the reason I'm thinking that he had some help, someone got rid of that bike for him. Someone took the bike from that scene. Now they'll never find that bike. So could he have met someone in the park that secreted that backpack? Could that same person have rode away on that e-bike so there was no trace of that? And then he gets in the cab on 86th Street and takes the cab uptown to the Port Authority. Phil.
Billy, I'm so glad you brought up the bike, because the bike is going to be intricate to this whole thing. That bike, we see him going down 85th Street on that bike. Where did that bike go? Now, there's going to be other cameras. Like I said the other day, the detectives leapfrog the cameras. So he's going west on 85th Street or whatever it is, and they go down further and they find a camera. Now they see him going this direction, that direction. At some point, he disposes of that bike. What happened to it? That's going to be a key thing. If it's on videotape, very helpful. Perhaps if a conspiracy is built here, if there's somebody else involved in this thing, he travels through the states. And I'm so glad Mike brought this up. This could become a federal case because you're crossing state lines in a conspiracy to kill someone. Now the feds take over and there could be a death penalty case here. And that's going to get a lot of people shaken. Trust me, when you're facing the needle, a lot of different things go through your mind. And this perpetrator is very, very cold-blooded. We know that, the way he acted. But he used that cover of darkness. Like I said, it was really just about starting to get light out. It was dark. That was helpful in his way of his method of escape. What are we looking at here? 10 days in the city. Well, what are his movements? Did he have that bike the whole time? And if there is GPS on it, it's going to show us all the movements. That's going to be great, along with that cell phone. I'm really, really thinking perhaps that these two individuals, the victim, Brian Thompson, and the perpetrator that killed him, did they cross paths? Was he stalking him beforehand? There is technology that exists today that can take the victim's cell phone and put it with that other cell phone and see if they were ever next to each other at any point. That's very, very important. This technology exists. It's not going to happen like this, but when the investigators start digging in, they'll be able to put these things together.
This is a great clip from ABC News with retired Chief of Detectives Robert Boyce on it. I want to play this here.
Just on how law enforcement is working to track down the shooter. I'm joined now by former NYPD Chief of Detectives Robert Boyce and retired FBI Special Agent and profiler Mary Ellen O'Toole. Welcome to both of you. Thanks for joining us. And let me start with you, Robert. It really has been remarkable watching this investigation unfold. Give us a sense of how they're doing this. They have all those cameras. This is kind of reminiscent of going after the Boston bomber in 2013.
Good morning, Martha. It really is. It's a fascinating case, and it's bifurcated. So right now you're in Central Park trying to find that evidence that he left there. You see, we found the backpack last night, so surprises with that. And he leaves, and he only has 12 minutes in the park. So you got to figure where he went on that bicycle and what happened to that weapon. You really want to recover that weapon. He goes up the west side of the park, and there's a lake right there. So they were dragging the lake last night looking for a possible to recover that. When they get that weapon, you'll be able to help identify the perpetrator at some point, and also put to bed all those things, what it might be. So it's important. The second part of this investigation is the apprehension, identification, apprehension. Now, we left the city about 45 minutes after he committed this crime. That's really quick. We have him on a bus. We think we have him on a bus out of Upper Manhattan. If he takes it to any different spot and gets on another bus, that has to be tracked as well. But right now, the NYPD is looking at Atlanta, Georgia. So they have a base of operations there. Detectives went down there last night to forward information back from people they speak with, because that's about the number of tips they're getting is larger than anywhere else. Those tips coming out of Atlanta, Georgia.
But how much more difficult is it now that he has left New York City and it is a nationwide search?
It complicates things, there's no doubt. But the NYPD, listen, he did this in Manhattan. We have the largest police department in the country, second largest in the world. So we have a lot of resources and a lot of partners. So it complicates it, but it doesn't make it impossible. I've sent detectives all over the world at some point, especially in the United States. You operate, you send someone down there, you create a base, and you go back and forth, and you work with any police department in the country. So it complicates this, but it's not over. You can quickly overcome it with the right resources.
And Mary Ellen, you were an FBI profiler. When you look at this case, when you look at him, when you look at those videos and what they've found in that backpack, they found monopoly money. I mean, what does this all tell you about this suspect?
When I look at the suspect and I look at his behavior from beginning to what we think is when he left New York City, there's a quality to it that suggests there's a little bit of practice there and there's almost a lack of experience. And those two things are very different. So what I mean by that is, looks like he practiced things. He probably had been to New York before and knew what the route was. He knew where the victim was going to be. He knew what his schedule was going to be. So that would come with knowledge, but the experience means, is he an experienced assassin? And I would disagree with that. So practice versus experience. There's almost
what about that monopoly money?
There's almost a game-like quality to this behavior. So, for example, the way that he's caught on a number of video cameras, and I know with the ballistics, there were some interesting behaviors there as well. So that may come from the idea that the way he got practice is how? Video games, TV shows.
That's a very interesting point. But those shell casings that said deny, defend, depose, can certainly offer some clues, perhaps to motive.
They could, and the motive would be very specific then, because then it would go to issues relative to the health and that system and being denied that sort of thing. However, when you have a game player who's your offender, you have to be open that that is a ruse to cause law enforcement to look in a different direction. And I'm sure they're aware of that. They are great investigators up there. So they're looking at the possibility it has to do with the medical field, but they're also considering the possibility maybe this offender wants us to look in a different direction.
And Robert, I want to ask you, do you think the FBI at this point knows more than they are telling us? And are you surprised that there is no name yet, given those pretty clear pictures of his face?
No, I'm not surprised, and we don't know that, to be honest with you, Martha, that he's not identified. I would, in my time, it's 35 years of the police department, we don't give out the name once we get it until we make an apprehension effort. Once that fails, then you give out the name. So right now, we really don't know. And it would be surprising, but that image is pretty good. And we have another one that came in from a cab where you have a partial. So things are mounting up right now. So that's putting that out there, engaging the public through media, through social media, and through law enforcement partners. That's how this gets done. There's going to be a lot of phone calls on him.
Okay, we're so hopeful that they will catch him and catch him soon. Thanks.
So very interesting, right? The take, and I've seen this Mary Eleanor Toole before. She's an FBI profiler. She knows her stuff. She's pretty sharp. The monopoly money, and it's not. Look, he's almost like he's playing games. He's teasing law enforcement. And the second piece of evidence about that is on the spent shells, depose, delay, and deny. And I didn't know that each one of them had one word written on them. So depose, delay, and deny was written on separate spent shells. Why did he do that? Why did he take the time to do that? He's playing games. He's obviously trying to make some type of political statement against United Healthcare. Now, the thing we all ask also, was it the corporation United Healthcare that he was trying to teach a lesson to? Or did he specifically have something against the CEO and he used him as to send the message to that entire company? Or did he just really want to kill the CEO of United Healthcare? That's a question I don't have an answer to, and I think that could be part of the motive in regards to this. Phil, your thoughts?
Yeah, Billy, that's a great point. I mean, is this aimed at him personally? Is it aimed at the healthcare industry? And I got to tell you, Bill, with all of these different details coming out between the writing on the shell casings and the monopoly money found in the backpack, it's kind of taken on like a serial killer type of case here. You know, David Berkowitz, there was the, back and forth back in those days. We had these other serial killers that wrote letters to the media and stuff. So this kind of has that kind of a feel to it. Is his threats or is his message to the healthcare industry? Is it to United Healthcare? That's a question I think we really have to get to the bottom of here. And the only way we're going to know is further on down the line when we get a hold of this guy and we get hands on him. We're going to see what his social media activity is, see what his cell phone activity is, his computer, things of that nature. Once we get into the purpology of who he is, and I think Chief Boyce made a great point there. We never released a name right away. So it is possible, even though certain contacts have told us that he's not identified by name, it could be that they're just keeping everything very close to the vest. And they do have his name. Atlanta seems to be the real focal point of the investigation at this point. We know detectives are down there. They're going to be doing what they have to do, leapfrogging video cameras and things of that nature. And I think that the media in Atlanta has to get that picture that's right there on the screen in front of us, get that out locally every half hour, every 10 minutes or whatever they can do to get it circulated. Because if he's from that area, this picture is going to make be the turning point where the phone call is made and says, that's Joe Blow. And I think that that's going to be very important in this case. This is when the media is on our side, is one of the assets that we will utilize to get the message out. And hopefully that right phone call will come in.
You know, Phil, another reason you just mentioned that they don't want to give out that name, besides obvious reasons, that it gives the perp a heads up that they know who he is and where he is. But they don't want the press all over Atlanta either. And I'm sure they're already down there anyway.
Oh, for sure.
But once they give out a name, that you're going to talk about, like there's going to be a press convention in Atlanta, and they'll just get in the way of this investigation.
They'll Google his name and be at his front door. So bottom line, that's what'll happen.
Well, yeah, they'll go there first,
Yeah,
and just
we don't want
destroy it.
that. We don't want anybody getting in the way of an investigation.
Of course not. But with his photograph out there, and again, as you just said, if he is in fact from Atlanta, lots of people are going to know this guy. And the 1-800-577-TIPS is probably ringing off the hook right now. And that's why they sent it. And detectives, when they do go to another state, they immediately liaison with that jurisdiction's detectives. They don't just, because they don't know the area, they don't know the players, they don't know the people, and the people don't know them. Because this is a huge case now and has crossed interstate lines, the FBI is involved now.
100%.
The FBI will not take charge of this case. I'll tell you that right now. The FBI will not take a homicide case away from the NYPD, but they will assist. And the FBI has a great deal of technology, and they have a great deal of money that they can use to investigate this case. Many of you are making a point, and I understand you, and I feel you, and I understand it. Why are all these resources being put into this case? If John Q. Citizen was shot, would they have this many detectives, with the FBI? Would they have all of these other federal agencies looking for this guy? The answer is no. You're right. I'm not going to deny that. I've said in the chat that in Manhattan, believe it or not, when a case is below 59th Street, it gets much more attention than a case that's above 59th Street gets, or even 96th Street. There's certain areas of the city, it's just going to bring, and one of the reasons is, of course, the police department reacts to the press, and the press is all over this case. Immediately, that makes it a much huger case. So don't blame it on me that the homicide investigation is not an equal opportunity employer. This just happens to be the nature of this city and this world. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, and this is a squeaky wheel. Professor Mike.
Yeah, Bill, as you said before, politics and policing, they go hand in hand. We've seen that from the time we were rookie cops all the way to the end of our career. That's the way it goes. If you've got a phone call, that is political power. You can call up somebody and get something done, and you can get a favor done. You can get more resources on a case, whatever it happens to be. Because you shake that tree down in police headquarters, the chiefs are going to want you to have all the resources you need so that to solve a case, because now their reputation is on the line. So therefore, yeah, if that is the way it is. Not to say that the police don't care about other homicides in other poorer areas, but because the NYPD detectives are the greatest in the world. But the fact is, will you have a huge task force set up? In this case, you will. For many other people, no. And the potential that this could be something to do with domestic terrorism, it's going to fuel the FBI involvement, and they're going to be just as keen on the NYPD solving this case as if they were the lead jurisdiction in this case. That's just the way it goes. So, that's everywhere. No matter where you are in the world, that's the way it goes.
Absolutely. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, then you're in the right place. And if you're not subscribed, hit that red subscribe button on the screen. Give us a thumbs up. Hit the like button. Share us with your friends and your family. And if you want to contribute to us financially, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels. We also have a YouTube channel membership with 5 different levels, and you can join our Police Off the Cuff family on YouTube and become part of this channel, and you'll be notified every time we go live. I want to play this from News Nation.
NYPD releasing new photos of the suspect. The NYPD releasing new photos of the suspect, while New York City Mayor Eric Adams implied at a press conference that law enforcement has identified him. News Nation's Caitlin Becker is with us from right outside Central Park, where authorities are searching for the murder weapon this morning. Caitlin, good morning. What are we learning?
Yeah, Hannah, Central Park is a hotbed of police activity.
divers were wading through the lake in Central Park searching for the murder weapon. It's believed to be a rare gun called a B&T Station 6. Investigators actually went to Connecticut to look for the place of purchase. And we know from that surveillance video that it's a long-barreled gun with a suppressor that was attached to the end. It does seem that the divers so far have come up empty-handed, so they may be back again for a second day of searching in that lake. As you said, we also have new images released by the NYPD of the suspect. They're pretty close up. They're pretty clear. He is in a mask again. However, I feel like when you're looking at the pictures that his eyebrows and his eyes are pretty distinctive. So this may lead someone to say, hey, I recognize this guy. I saw him that day. And if it's any indication by Mayor Eric Adams, it does seem like the NYPD is closing in on their suspect. But Hannah, I want you to pay attention on exactly how he phrases this. Take a look.
We don't want to release that now. If you do, you're basically giving a tip to the person we're seeking, and we do not want to give him an upper hand at all. Let him continue to believe he can hide behind the mask. We're going to just as we revealed his face, we're going to reveal who he is, and we're going to bring him to justice.
So he seems to indicate that they know who it is, but they don't want to reveal his name publicly so that they don't spook him. Some people took that as an indication that maybe they don't actually have his name, that it just is something that perhaps they're getting closer, or the mayor wants to make it seem as so. But it's possible, Hannah, that we could get a name soon.
And Caitlin, you were reporting about the backpack that was found in Central Park. There was a lot of interest in what was inside. What do we know this morning?
Hannah, you're not going to believe this. I mean, this was this bombshell discovery. It was discarded in Central Park by 71st Street. They thought inside it could actually point them to the killer. It was Monopoly money. Monopoly money stuffed inside of this backpack, and a Tommy Hilfiger jacket. Unclear if the jacket is the killer's, unclear if it's something that could point to a possible motive as to why, unclear if it's a random jacket that could just be a red herring to make investigators kind of chase their tail. So the Monopoly money could suggest, of course, something similar to what we saw in those bullet casings, that this has something to do with United Healthcare, with the insurance industry. Or it's something that's just going to taunt police and waste their time, Hannah. It seems like the killer in this case is kind of owning the narrative a little bit by leaving these clues along that are forcing us to sort of talk about them. It seems like it's out of a Netflix movie, Hannah.
It really is. Monopoly money inside that backpack. Really great reporting, Caitlin Becker. Thank you so much.
So what is that all about? What is, he's definitely making a statement to the police about leaving that Monopoly money. Like, what is that? Is that in the same vein as writing depose, delay, and deny on the side of the spent shells? He seems like he's taunting the police, like catch me if you can type thing. So all of these things, the planning, the recon, the timeline of when he did things, firearms proficiency. He absolutely had a level of firearms proficiency. I don't believe, and I don't think none of us on this panel believe, that he's a professional hitman, if that term even exists. But he did have a level of firearms proficiency that we witnessed on the video. It's caught on video. But yet he used what we call in law enforcement as countermeasures to see that he wasn't caught, see he wasn't identified. However, even with all of those precautions and those preparations, as you can see, we still have video and stills were made of his face. So all the countermeasures in the world may not prevent him from, I believe he's going to get caught. But I spoke about this before we went on the air with Professor Mike. Say they catch him now, right? And he immediately invokes counsel. Not an easy case to prove. There's no eyeball witness to this because you can't put the gun in his hand and you can't positively say that's the shooter right there. Now, how do we do this then? What evidentiary way do we connect him to this shooting, Professor Mike?
Well, Bill, hopefully if you get the bicycle and you can get a name in there, he could be connected to the bicycle through a purchase or a rental. That's one thing. If you could get possibly an ID, an eyewitness ID, we talked about this from the person in the hostel for where he took down the mask and he exposed his face and you can see the smile. Possibly, again, that's possible. If you can get the firearm, again, possible. It's going to be all circumstantial. There's not going to be one eyewitness person that could sit in a courtroom and say, I saw that man shoot Mr. Thompson at 6:45 in the morning. There he is right there. That's the killer. It's not going to happen. It's all going to be circumstantial. Maybe it'll be a fingerprint. Maybe it'll be DNA. It's going to be a difficult case to do. You're right. There's not a single direct evidence that puts him at that particular location at that particular time doing that particular deed. Definitely.
So, which is why the fingerprints, the DNA, and if they don't find this gun, if it's never recovered, that exacerbates this problem of producing a solid case against him. I'm not trying to be a soothsayer and say, oh, they're going to build a case against him. However, when we look at the problems, the potential problems here, especially if they don't recover the firearm, you're as you said, Mike, circumstantial evidence from which inferences are drawn. That is what that means, circumstantial evidence. And that is the type of evidence they'll have. Not to say that circumstantial evidence cannot be extremely strong evidence. It absolutely can. Phil, I can see you chomping at the bit. You want to jump in here?
I am. Couple quick points. The shell casings, those shell casings are at the scene. They came out of the gun that killed the victim in this case. If there's DNA or a fingerprint on those and he handled them, that's probably going to be the strongest direct evidence with any of the evidence in this case. That's going to be probably the strongest. So let's hope that those things exist. Billy, when you talked about the proficiency of him being a shooter, you had that expert on yesterday that talked about his stance. He had his left foot was tucked under, his right leg was pushed, instead of it being forward, it was pushed back. So he didn't take a very, very professional stance. Did he have proficiency with handling that particular gun? Yes, he did, 100%. In my belief, and this is just my belief, he took that gun back with him wherever he came from. He brought it there and he took it back. The reason I say that is because if he purchased that gun, even if he was able to take the serial numbers off it, we could still raise those numbers. That gun may come right back to him. So I think he held on to it. Could it be in the lake? 100% possible. But in my belief, I think he's going to take that gun with him. This guy's making a lot of statements. He's dotted a lot of I's and crossed a lot of T's in this investigation. He's not a professional hitman, as we all have that same opinion. But he went through great lengths not to get caught in this case, not to get caught. And you guys brought up some good points. There's not a lot of direct evidence because his face is covered. But those shell casings and that bike and things of that nature, that cell phone, those are going to tie him in. And Bill, you made the point. Circumstantial evidence could be very, very powerful, especially when we're going to have all this videotape. And if we can tie that cell phone to him or his own cell phone, because I think he had two of them, that's going to show the map and it's going to show what his exact location was at that time of morning. So we're going to have a lot of evidence here. Is it going to be very direct where a person's going to say, that's him? No, I don't think we're going to get that. But we're going to have all this other evidence.
Absolutely. From the chat, Stephen Sokolowski, all the evidence is placed on purpose. Look at recent criminology grads. Look at any GoFundMe 6 months prior. Look for commie, anarchist message boards, social media chatter. You know, Stephen Sokolowski, as we speak, members of the NYPD and FBI are doing exactly what you're pointing out. They're going over in-depth social media, see what the chatter is saying. Because sometimes people in the chatter on the internet, they know something, or they could be connected to organizations. We don't know if this individual acted alone. We absolutely don't know. And not many people are talking about that now. It would seem that this was an awful lot to do by yourself.
He had to have help. Whether it be direct or indirect, I think he had to have help, Bill.
I'm thinking the same thing. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, Bill, he was there for a week, at least a week before the shooting occurred. He was seen on the cell phone talking to somebody. Somebody was helping him finance and helping him move through the city, giving him tips, giving him advice. He rehearsed this numerous times. Somebody probably had inside information, and this is what I love. It's the $1 million question. Who how did he know where to actually be? Because as you said, Phil, he may have come across this gentleman, Mr. Thompson, 2 days earlier. Why didn't he take him out the first time he saw him? He gets to the city. First thing he does is he goes right to that location. He knew exactly where to be, when to be there, and who he was looking for, and he knew where that person was going to be traveling. That's huge inside information. I don't think he could get that on his own. I think he had help, definitely. So just think about it. What's the definition of a conspiracy? It's all you need is two people for a conspiracy, and I think that's what you got.
Different scenario if this goes down at 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, lunchtime in Manhattan, as opposed to 6 o'clock in the morning. That's why I think that particular time was chosen. Yeah. And Mike, you're making such great points with the conspiracy. He's on the phone with someone at 6 o'clock in the morning. They had the video just before the shooting, whatever time it was. Who's he talking to? He's not discussing the weather in Manhattan at that time. He's talking to somebody saying, you know, I'm going to the location, whatever. That's why I really believe there's somebody else involved in this case.
Phil, you know something. The other thing is, who planted the bike that was used as his escape vehicle? Who put it inside that, not even an alleyway, that little cut through on 55th Street?
It wasn't a gift from Santa Claus, that's for sure.
Well, because he wasn't seen riding the bike until he got on it in that cut through on 55th Street. Someone put it there for him. Therefore, I'm thinking he did absolutely have help. He did not act alone. Don't forget, you know, he was here. Look, when you say he was financed very cheaply because he stayed in a youth hostel. And that could have been for a twofold reason. A, it was cheap, and B, he could probably remain anonymous, more anonymous at a youth hostel where he could give them a fake ID and they wouldn't question him and show up with a mask over his face and they didn't say, pull your mask down or you're not coming in here. You know, where a hotel, you'd have to produce a valid credit card and picture ID in order to check into a hotel. So some of the things he did, you think about countermeasures. Yeah, that's why he did that, because he was trying to thwart the investigation at the very, very beginning because he doesn't want to get caught. But yet he did some things that were very foolish. Going into Starbucks and buying the water and the 2 protein bars. What the hell was that all about? You know, and he was caught on video there, right? And they were able to recover that water bottle. And that is perhaps where they first obtained his DNA from the water bottle. And then he had 2 protein bars. So he was giving law enforcement what I've heard a lot of people saying recently, breadcrumbs of evidence. You know, he was leaving breadcrumbs of evidence behind. And that's absolutely true. From the chat, Brian Paula.
Go ahead. I'm
Delay,
sorry.
Deny, and Depose is a book written about insurance claims being denied.
Yes.
Brian Paul, yes, we're aware of that. We're going to get into that a little bit later, but thank you very much for bringing that up. And there is the political part of this, the political nature of this, to show that there was a political reason for taking the life of the CEO of United Healthcare, of Brian Thompson. There was definitely a political reason. And again, he was the face of this company. So the message was sent. We're going to take him out. This is from NBC News. We'll play a short clip here.
Overnight, police releasing 2 new images of the person of interest.
It's
in the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. The person seen inside what appears to be a taxi cab and in another photo walking next to a vehicle. It comes after police recovered this backpack in Central Park, believed to be linked to the person of interest seen in surveillance video. 2 senior law enforcement officials say no gun was found. What was found, a jacket and Monopoly money. The NYPD says nothing in their investigation so far suggests the killing was related to Thompson's personal life.
The net is tightening, and we're going to bring this person to justice.
New York City Mayor Eric Adams says details like whether or not police have an ID on the shooter are being closely held.
We don't want to release that now. If you do, you're basically giving a tip to the person we're seeking, and we do not want to give him an upper hand at all.
But there are new details about the suspect. New York City's chief of detectives providing a timeline based on video footage to reporters. The shooter arrived in New York on Sunday, November 24th, and was caught on camera at the Port Authority bus terminal near Times Square. The bus he took originated in Atlanta, though it's not clear when the shooter got on, given that there were several stops on the way to New York. The shooter then took a taxi to the area where the shooting occurred. It was there for about a half hour before heading to a hostel on the Upper West Side, where he possibly provided a fake ID to check in. He checked out of the hostel on Friday, November 29th, but checked back in the next day. While at the hostel, the suspect had two roommates who say he kept his mask on even when eating, lowering it only when taking a bite of food. And according to a senior law enforcement official, in this one moment upon his initial arrival when flirting with a woman who worked at the front desk. The shooter left the hostel at 5:30 a.m. the morning of the shooting. After the shooting, traveling by bike up to Central Park, then by taxi further uptown to a bus terminal where police believe he boarded a bus out of New York City. And from there, the trail goes cold. Police are now investigating if the weapon may be a veterinary gun used to put down animals.
This is a very rare weapon. In essence, this is a needle in a haystack, but we have a lot of needles in this one haystack, which works in our favor in law enforcement to apprehending this violent assailant that's on the streets.
Police also clarified the detail about words written on shell casings, saying they were depose, delay, and deny, written in Sharpie, one word on each shell casing, a possible reference to frustration with the health insurance industry.
And Tom joins me now live from the scene of that deadly shooting. Tom, good morning. We're now entering the 5th day of the hunt for the killer. Never like to hear those words you uttered in your piece, the trail goes cold. So where does the search stand this morning?
Well, good morning, Willie. Clearly, with NYPD detectives in Georgia, the involvement of the FBI with that $50,000 reward, and the fact that this person, according to the NYPD, came to New York City from a bus that originated in Atlanta, well, the focus is clearly in that state. But until law enforcement gets a name, it's going to be very difficult for them to put handcuffs on someone. Once they do get that name, they'll be able to use some law enforcement tools to hopefully bring a resolution to this case. Willie?
The search continues this morning. Tom Winter in New York for us.
The timeline, very interesting in this case, of course. Carol Grayson, thank you so much for the £2 super sticker. Very much appreciated. All you folks, all you new names in the chat, thank you so much for coming by today, supporting Police Off the Cuff. This is one of the most interesting cases of the year that's coming, of course, coming to fruition at the end of the year, but a big case. Not just, as we said earlier on, not just a national case, but there's international interest in this case. And it is what we would call in the biz, in the investigative biz, as a whodunit, because no one knows who done it yet. And that's what these investigators are working on right now. Phil, your thoughts?
Yeah, this mission, I'm going to call it a mission. This guy was on a mission. This mission was well funded. He doesn't appear to be wearing cheap clothing or anything like that. He paid cash in a lot of different areas. He moved about the city for 10 days. He had to eat. He was paying for the hostel. So this apparently, came with well funding. There's so many different elements to this whole thing. And listen, there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there. It could be red herrings that they're talking about. We're leaving the name on the bullet, those words on the bullets and stuff. But I'm really starting to focus on this case that I think it is related to the insurance industry, healthcare. Seems like he's a Bill, you categorized him as a terrorist. And he's got a corporate terrorist. Corporate terrorist and an anti-insurance company activist, as I said. I really feel strongly that there's some other people involved in this. I don't think he did this all by himself. I really feel he had help. Could be, like I said, directly or indirectly. But when he's on that phone, that really stuck with me, that he was talking to someone and all the other things that are taking place in this case. I know we're going to get the answers to this thing. I know everyone is frustrated. We want this thing solved yesterday, obviously. Person was killed. People were left without a family member. It's egregious because it happened basically in broad daylight in Midtown Manhattan. So we all want the conclusion of this case. We want to know the answer to all these questions. These are all going to come out in time. Investigators are working really hard and diligently in this case. There's no question. Now we believe the FBI is involved full throttle. So we're going to get to all of these things. And it's just very interesting to be looking at this case as former investigators, former police officers. we feel like we're in it because we're talking about it, but the investigators need to do their thing. They're going to come to the conclusions. We just got to all have a little patience.
From the chat, Paul K, thank you so much for the $10 super sticker. Great show, great guest. I would like to know, how did he know the victim was leaving his room at that time?
Yes.
Hello.
Very important.
Apparently his itinerary, and this was, I can't say this from personally seeing it, but someone reported in the chat that it was mentioned on their website that this convention or whatever it was for United Healthcare was being held at this location and at this time. So with a little bit of research and then follow up, and maybe he had a mole inside. As we said, it seemed like he had some help here. Maybe he has someone inside the company that was feeding him the information as to the whereabouts and the schedule of the CEO, Brian Thompson. The other thing is that everyone is raising their hand, putting their hands on their head. Why did a man making $10 million or $11 million a year, worth $50 million, is the CEO of a company that's receiving all kinds of threats? Why did he not have a security detail? Everyone's shaking their head. You can bet everyone in these industries that are CEOs are calling every single security company trying to get bodyguards for the holiday season now, because they're all quite afraid based on what happened here. Professor Mike.
Yeah, Bill, if you're in the security business in 2025, you're going to do really well. And that this case is going to spur a lot of business. But yeah, it's 6:45 in the morning. He's up. He's going from one hotel across the street to the other hotel where he's going to be meeting a whole group of people. He had a small group. He's going to go across the street, go to another group. The number of people that could possibly know that movement is really limited, and so, if you're talking about someone, a shareholder finding out, that stockholder finding out that there's going to be a meeting of stock, people in this hotel in this particular date and time, it's going to tell you it's going to have the meeting. You're not going to know the individual movements of all of the other officers on the board of directors or the CEO. Someone was feeding him information in real time. If he was there only about maybe like 30 or 40 minutes before Mr. Thompson went from that one building across the street to the other building, someone was feeding him information in real time. That wasn't just luck, serendipitously that he got there. No, somebody was giving him information in real time. And that's my $1 million question is who is giving him that information?
Well, I think some of the proof in the pudding is that you could see him walking on the street, talking to someone on the phone.
Yeah.
That was pre-shooting. That was preparation. That was someone else involved in this with him. Because who would you be calling home to mom at that point? No. I think that.
Could it be someone saying he'll be leaving the hotel across the street in the next 10 minutes? We don't know.
Yes.
I mean, there's so many variables there. It just seems like he had this sensitive information. Now, it was posted on their website that there was going to be this conference. Yes. What time was the conference going to start? It wasn't going to start at 7 o'clock in the morning or a little, whatever the time was that he was across the street, 6:44. I think it was going to start a little later, but he knew that he was coming from another location. That's why he waited outside. He wasn't within the New York Hilton where the conference was going to be held. He knew he was coming from somewhere else. How did he know that? Very, very important.
Absolutely. From the chat, Be Real, they said the gun was the kind used to put animals down. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So an unusual type of gun chosen because it didn't make a lot of noise when he fired it, but it presented several other problems in that he had to eject the rounds manually. The gun did not, as reported early on in this investigation, the gun didn't get jammed. He just had to clear it by manually ejecting the shells as he fired it. So most people would be very nervous about having to do that. He seemed to be calm and collective as he was doing that. So, yeah, you may question, was this his first rodeo? Was this his first time doing something like this? Someone in the chat, I can't find them right now, said this was not his first shooting. You very well could be right.
I had colleagues say the same thing to me. Did he start out becoming a killer in one day, like, or was this something that he built up to? And I guess that question begs to be asked, because we know from history, people usually graduate to these type of things. They start out at one position and they move up to this. And it's maybe quite possible that he did have a propensity towards violence previously.
Absolutely. Reason 1024. DNA only works if it's already in a system. Reason 1024, that's not totally true, but it's half true. And I'll explain. He's not in the CODIS system because they have a good DNA sample. CODIS stands for Combined DNA Index System. It's run by the FBI. There's two categories of DNA in CODIS, and one is offender DNA. That's anyone on a national level who's been arrested for a felony, convicted of a felony and certain misdemeanors. Their DNA is in the CODIS database. The second category of DNA in CODIS is forensic DNA. That's DNA that's unidentified. So, for example, if he remains unidentified here, his DNA will be in CODIS as forensic DNA. But there's another way, and this is relatively new, and it's something that we've seen if you followed the Gilgo Beach serial killer case, there's something called investigative genetic genealogy. And on the Koberger case in Idaho, the man charged with murdering 4 students, investigative genetic genealogy came into play. They can build a family tree, and I'm not going to get deeply into this now because it's very complicated. They can build a family tree. They already know where this guy is from, his ethnicity, his background, his height, his weight, from the DNA. They can determine many of those things. If they need to, they can build a family tree and find out who this is. But as we're being told, unconfirmed, they may have a name on him already, and that may not be necessary. But you can bet your bottom dollar the FBI has already started an investigative genetic genealogy tree. Mike.
Yeah, Billy, because the great thing about investigative genetic genealogy is that even they got his DNA, they put in the system. Okay, his exact DNA has never been put in the system before. So as you say, it's just DNA from the crime scene. But if any member of his family, including distant cousins, has ever, donated DNA to a genealogy site to find out their family history, where their ancestors were from, that would match, and they would be able to determine, how far a distant person that is, and they'd get a name. So then you'd go, and talk to those people. That would take probably months to get, depending on, I'm sure, the pressure. But this has been done in cases. We saw this with the Koberger case when they got Mr. Koberger's DNA. In Pennsylvania, they realized it wasn't the exact DNA from Koberger himself. It was from a close father relative. So they realized, okay, the guy that they have under observation, that's the killer, because we got his father's DNA. So it's really important, but it takes time. But it's amazing. All you need is one member of his family to have donated DNA to one of those websites, and then you could build a family tree.
Absolutely. Very well said. Willa Knotts from the chat, I'm glad you made this comment because it's going to lead us right into our next topic. When citizens don't feel protected from the frauds, the people take freedom back by themselves, just like in recent election. It was about the economy and our freedom. Now it's about healthcare freedoms. Thank you, Willa, for that comment. And what I want to lead into is that, to me, it's a little bit disturbing that the social media crowd and many people out there, some are applauding the murder of Brian Thompson, because to them, he's the boogeyman. He's the CEO of United Healthcare, a company that I don't have the exact statistic, but they turned down many claims for people that need certain procedures that could save their lives. So people are looking at that. He's the boogeyman, and they're looking at the shooter in this case as somewhat of a folk hero. Like he's a hero. He killed this boogeyman, this bad CEO of this United Healthcare And I've had people write in the chat, he's killed way more people than the shooter in this case has killed. Well, I don't see how you can condone murder in any situation, you know? And yes, there are huge problems, and I don't want to get into all the politics of with healthcare in this country. Huge problems, right? But does that mean someone should be able to get a gun and execute the CEO of this company, Phil?
Billy, you couldn't have said it any better. I feel really disgusted that there are tenured journalists out there that are applauding the murder of this man. Now, I know the healthcare system could be in shambles, and there's probably people that in need of critical care and they don't get it. I mean, there's other ways to let your voice be heard, whether it be on letter writing, email, or protest, whatever it is. Violence is not the answer. I cannot, as a law enforcement officer, retired law enforcement officer, a member of the law enforcement community, I cannot condone violence in any way, shape, or form. This man was killed. There are so many other victims other than him, his family, his friends, his relatives that are going to suffer from this. Now, I know that when other people die because of being denied health care, their families suffer well. However, I cannot condone this. This is really social media lit up after this murder took place with anti-insurance company comments and things of that nature. And listen, I get it. It's a problem. There's no one should be denied health care in this country. No one. Absolutely. I agree with that. But we cannot become vigilantes and take that kind of justice, so to speak, with an individual who's the head of a company, the CEO of United Healthcare. That's just not going to fly in my book. If we get to that, I mean, what are we as a society then? So we cannot condone violence. We know, listen, your voice can be heard. Everybody has an opinion. It's a freedom of speech in this country. I get it. However, once you turn to violence, that's where I check out of the conversation.
Absolutely. You know, folks, this is the headline of the New York Times. Some on social media see suspect in CEO killing as a folk hero. The authorities have pleaded for help in finding the person who killed Brian Thompson, the chief executive of United Healthcare. But some seem more interested in rooting for the gunman. A grainy image of his face drew comparisons to Hollywood heartthrobs. A jacket similar to the one he's wearing on wanted posters is reportedly flying off the shelves. And the words written on the bullets he used to kill a man in cold blood on the sidewalk on Wednesday have become, for some people, a rallying cry. 3 days after a gunman assassinated a top health insurance executive in Midtown Manhattan and vanished, the unidentified suspect has in some quarters been venerated as something approaching a folk hero. The authorities have pleaded for help from the public to find the person who killed United Healthcare executive Brian Thompson, who was a husband and father of 2 children. But in a macabre turn, some people seem to be more interested in rooting for the gunman and thwarting the police officers. How disturbing is that, Mike?
Bill, it's so disturbing. I can't even tell you. It's disgusting. You know, there's ways to notify your political representatives in Washington. If you're thinking that maybe a better healthcare system would be something where it's the companies that provide healthcare are not for profit, and so that it would be a different formulation in their corporate structure, that's fine. You know, you can do that. Vote for those representatives who want to do that sort of thing, but you can never condone wanton, shooting somebody in cold blood. That's not the answer. And you know what? This guy deserves whatever punishment he gets, and I hope that's life behind bars.
Absolutely, but I mean, I'm a little concerned. Will this stop people from calling the tips line because they're rooting for the bad guy? You know, they're rooting for the guy who took someone's life, who murdered someone in cold blood. Is that what we've become in this society? Because you're mad at a corporation, and there are so many political a political nature to this murder, and we're not going to solve it, but you're certainly not going to solve something like this by utilizing violence. And that's what some people seem to be advocating for.
You know, Billy, in the chat, people are saying, and I get it, there's frustration, but they're saying, no, you don't get it, Mr. Law Enforcement. You just don't get it. So bow to crooks. How do we make change then? How? No, we don't bow to crooks. How do you make change? I don't know what the answers are, but I could give you some expressions of my feelings about it, how to make change. Elect politicians that will fight for you, that will fight the healthcare system. That's one of the ways. Letter writing, emails, and protest. Legal protest, peaceful protest. That's the only thing that I can offer. I'm a law enforcement officer in my heart. My blood is blue. That's the way I feel. I cannot condone violence in any way, shape, or form. That's my own personal way. I think my other two colleagues on the panel feel the same way. This is not about condoning murder. I get it. There's a problem that's being brought to the surface here about healthcare. And unfortunately, it took a murder to bring it. But now we have to stop the violence, elect politicians that are going to fight for the people, that are going to fight the healthcare system. And if there are claims that should have been approved and people died, well, then by all means, perhaps there is a criminal aspect to it where people can be held accountable. But violence is not the answer.
Very well said, Phil. I want to play this from CBS News, this little short clip.
Latest in the assassination of the United Healthcare CEO. Right now, you're looking at newly released photos of the suspect here. Investigators released these two new photos of the suspect that appear to be from inside and then outside of a taxi with troves of evidence. Little is still known about the suspected gunman. Right now, the FBI is offering a $50,000 reward for any information that leads to the arrest of the man responsible for killing that CEO in Midtown Manhattan in the middle of the morning. Police in New York are now working around the clock for leads on that suspect. CBS News Miami's Chelsea Jones reports.
NYPD using drones scouring for clues in Central Park. Police believe they found the backpack belonging to the suspect in the killing of the United Healthcare CEO as the manhunt for the shooter stretches into the fourth day.
Our detectives are doing a very, very extensive video canvas.
Chilling video shows the moments the masked gunman approaches United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson outside a Hilton Hotel in Midtown Manhattan Wednesday. The full video, too disturbing to air, shows the killer shooting Thompson multiple times. Police say the bullet casings had the word delay, deny, and depose written on them, possibly alluding to a popular phrase in the insurance industry.
We have every reason to believe that this was a targeted attack.
Police releasing these photos of a person of interest in the case. After the shooting, police say the gunman gets on an e-bike, then heads into Central Park wearing a backpack. Police believe they found that backpack Friday, which they're hoping gives them further clues about the killer.
We already have lots of forensic evidence, fingerprints, DNA evidence.
Police believe the shooter traveled to New York on a bus that started its route in Atlanta and was staying at this hostel. Now, they have reason to believe the gunman left New York City by bus.
We have video of him entering the Port Authority bus terminal. We don't have any video of him exiting.
The FBI is now helping local authorities with the investigation.
It's always good to recap to see exactly, remind us what's going on, what happened. To recap, there's detectives down in Atlanta, Georgia. We don't know. Many aspects of this investigation have been kept close to the vest. They haven't released it. They believe he got on a bus at the 178th Street Port Authority, and they were saying they believe that bus was going to Georgia. So that's where detectives are focusing. That's where I would say ground zero of this investigation has moved to. Every city in this nation has an FBI office. So they will liaison with the Atlanta police. They will liaison with the local FBI. There's another unit that we haven't mentioned, and there's a unit called Fugitive Enforcement Division, which is a joint NYPD federal agency, which are one of the best law enforcement agencies on this earth.
U.S. Marshals, I believe.
And
right?
U.S. Marshals, yes. If they are on this guy's trail, they have all this, they will catch this guy.
Oh, absolutely.
It's professionals going against an amateur. So we are very confident they're going to catch this guy, but we also need to know, Is he identified? We won't find that out till they put handcuffs on somebody, and we're going to hear across the nation that a perp has been arrested. What will that entail? If he's arrested outside the New York State, Mike, maybe you could talk about what the legal proceeding will be at that point.
Well, if he's arrested, say for instance, he's arrested in Georgia, he's going to, whatever county that is in, he's going to be brought to the local county criminal court. And then they're going to have some sort of proceedings wherein he's going to have an attorney, and it's going to be called rendition or extradition, whatever you want to call it. And Manhattan County, New York County is going to have to ask for extradition of his body back to New York so that he could stand trial. As in the Koberger case, he's going to be represented by counsel. He may not fight the extradition. He may or may not. In the end, no matter what, he'll be handcuffed, taken before a judge in Georgia, and there'll be a motion to allow the NYPD to take him back physically, take his body back to New York, and he'll stand trial in Manhattan Supreme Court. Now, this might take a couple of days. In the case of the Koberger, it may take a couple of weeks, but most likely it'll be a very short term, maybe a week the most, from the time he's arrested to the time he gets back onto New York soil. And from there, he's going to be housed probably in Rikers or something like that. And then we'll have the trial. If he's caught sometime in January or the end of this month, it'll be a year and a half from now. He'll be going to trial.
From the chat, JCSD, no one pays for hotels for 10 days in New York City with cash bills. Great point. Mm-hmm. Someone else said, the hostel is $124 a night. By New York City standards, that's dirt cheap.
It is.
You go for a hotel in New York, you're talking $500, $600, $800, $1,000 a night. So, yes, $124.
Plus, this time of the year, the prices go up because the holiday season and all.
Yeah.
Too. And a good point, Billy.
Yeah.
Cheap hotels are $300-400 a night. Flea bags. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yep, absolutely. Will Kutnick from the chat. The perp knows about DNA. He didn't accidentally leave a water bottle for cops to find. Yeah, but sometimes they think they're so smart that they won't get caught, and they don't check, that they think they know how to thwart an investigation, but they make mistakes. They absolutely make mistakes. Folks, I want to thank so many of you people that are new to the channel. I see so many new names in the chat, and I just want to implore upon you, if you could just hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, hit the like button, and share us with your friends and family. We'd appreciate that very much. We're true crime from a police perspective. Whatever your political, Josh Fallon from the chat, this isn't political, it's called morals. Yes, Josh, but morals to murder someone over what you perceive as, or maybe he was done wrong. Maybe actually he or a family member were done wrong by United Healthcare. We don't know yet. But murdering someone over that, I'm not, when you talk about violence in that way, count me out. I'm not in on it, From the chat, Runt Packet, design rhythm that why he manipulated slide to eject the message would have actually been efficient in motion too. I don't know exactly what your conversation was within the chat. Joe and V from the chat, maybe he expected to get caught. Well, I think he does expect to get caught. He did many things that put himself out there to get caught. So absolutely. Nariyoshi Miyagi, getting rid of the bike, like, wow. Well, that's why we're thinking that he gave the bike to someone to get rid of it for him. And that's why we are thinking AM, what is JLR investigator said the killer probably wanted to throw monopoly money over the victim's body, but panicked because of JLR investigator is not a law enforcement person. I don't know where he got that from. He obviously made it up. But
monopoly money seems to be pointing out that this healthcare company was a monopoly. They had a monopoly over healthcare. That's the inferences that I was getting from, checking media stuff. Everybody has that opinion. So we don't really know till we talk to the perp, but that would seem kind of to fit.
No, absolutely. So, folks, with the recap, we know that the NYPD feels that the perp fled down to Atlanta. Detectives from the NYPD are down there. We don't know if in fact they have him identified by name. We've been told that, but no one has confirmed that. We will stay with this case as new information comes in. We want to thank everyone that tuned in today. And as we get new information, we'll come on the air immediately if there is an arrest in this situation. Professor Mike, your final thoughts.
Final thoughts for the people listening: just have patience with this case. No matter whose side you're rooting on, this guy is going to be caught, and he will face justice. Also, please realize that the information that is out there in the public realm isn't the sum total of all the clues that the police officers have regarding this fugitive. There's a lot more that they know, and they're not going to release it right now. So for all those people who think that this guy is some sort of catch me if you can, brilliant, criminal mind, don't fall for that.
Absolutely. Jamie from the chat, thank you for the £5 super sticker. Considering everything he's done so far, it's highly likely that he's pretending to talk to someone on the phone as a distraction. Jamie, that could be a possibility. I'm not counting anything out. I want to also thank John Donahue for the $10 super sticker. I don't see the sticker right now. Another one, JZ Gamer 12. Thank you for the $5 super sticker. He left clues. A fingerprint on the water bottle, although it was smudged, left Monopoly money to make a statement and to troll investigators. JZ Gamer, that's 100% true. You're right. We don't know if the fingerprint was usable because if it was smudged, they may not be able to reproduce it and use it in APHIS. Sean Pellegrino, thank you for the $2 super sticker. NYPD should release his ID photo from the fake ID. Well, I don't think they'll do that. I think that's one of the things they'll hold close to the vest. They probably would see no reason to do that when they've released numerous photos of this guy. Here it is, John Donahue. Thank you so much, John, for the $9.99 super sticker. Could he be from a different country? Yes, he could be from anywhere. We don't know. Again, they haven't released his name. They haven't released if he is in fact identified. We don't know yet. Phil, your final thoughts.
Final thoughts. I just wanted to piggyback something real quick that Mike said earlier. He laid out what would happen if this perpetrator is taken into custody. There could also be a conspiracy. This could be a federal case at some point where they just, the NYPD would make the arrest and they funnel it to the federal system where the penalties would be much more severe. On a personal note, we have to be better than this as a country, applauding someone's death. I really feel it's not the right thing to do. However, I'm not personally affected by a situation like this. If a person is, I could understand their frustration, losing a loved one, a member of the family, and wanting to lash out and take an eye for an eye. However, I think we're better than that as a country. There are other avenues you can have your voice heard. Let's just stay focused on this case. I am very confident there's going to be an arrest. It's just going to be a matter of time. They're going to find who this individual is, and they're going to put all the pieces together. It's going to be fascinating to find out all of the answers to the questions that we laid out here today. There's probably many, many more, but let's stay tuned and have a little patience. Investigators are working very hard. Real police work doesn't occur in a 1-hour series like on television. It takes time. It's very painstaking. The investigators are on it. It's going to be solved. It's just going to be a matter of time.
Absolutely. I just want to, say that we, at least from Police Off the Cuff, and you can join us and not, but we say prayers for this man, Brian Thompson, and his family for the loss of his life. I know many people are not sympathetic to this because of the politics involved, but we certainly are here at Police Off the Cuff. We want to thank everyone that tuned in today. This is really a complicated case, but a highly, highly interesting case. As I said, we'll keep you informed as we get new information. So on behalf of myself, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, and retired Detective Phil Grimaldi, retired Sergeant Professor Mike Geary, thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great day, everyone, and God bless.
Thanks to all the new subscribers and the new faces in the chat. God bless and stay safe.
One episode just ain't enough.